How to build a marketing plan. I'm Mason Pelt for Push ROI. This first lesson is going to cover defining goals and budgets. We're going to absolutely blast through it, but you're going to have to spend real time defining these. Without budgets, you have no way of building a plan because you have no clue what tools are available to deploy to achieve a goal. And without goals, well, in the words of Zig Ziglar, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. Goals dictate actions, actions dictate outcomes. If that meaning is not clear, consider the way you would train to run a marathon versus to powerlift competitively. The goals are different, the approaches to get there are totally different. And before we go too much further, let's define what a goal is. We're using a framework called S.M.A.R.T, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-related. There are other frameworks for goal setting and many other frameworks and philosophies for long-term planning, but defining the anatomy of a goal, S.M.A.R.T works well. Most people get on board with specific and measurable, though they are typically bad at naming goals, which are specific and measurable. Figuring out what's achievable, that's sort of the core job of marketing. More than anything else, marketing is making sure you're able to achieve your goals. Relevant to a business, well, you're probably better at telling when something is relevant to someone else's business than it is to your own, because if you really want to be on television, you will find a reason that you should be on television. And time-related is pretty much tested throughout all of human history. There have always been deadlines. So what's the goal? When I ask this professionally, people tend to name big numbers, something like 10 million followers, raise at a $300 million valuation, earn $1 billion. Or they go generic and directional, be famous, gain recognition, make more money, that sort of thing. The above set of goals, not really in the ballpark for most businesses. For one thing, 10,000 followers or 10 million followers in this case, not relevant to most business goals. It's usually this extraneous thing that detracts from being able to achieve anything meaningful. The $300 million valuation, some businesses certainly do need to plan a fundraise, and it will be at a $300 million valuation, but I've talked to too many founders that are closing a $25K seed round, and the valuation is like $500,000, but they're really worried about that down the line thing. And there's so much that has to happen between point A, where they are, and point B, that $300 million valuation, that it's not point B, it's more like point X. Earn $1 billion only if it's possible for your business and can be broken down into steps to get there. The generic goals, the directional goals here, be famous, gain recognition, totally meaningless. You have to define them because someone could mean 10,000 followers on TikTok is famous, or they could mean be George Clooney, right? On that scale, what is fame? Make more money? Bane of my existence, because people will say it like it means something, and now I have to define it. Usually in a business context, it means revenue, profit, or margin, and you can increase any one of those at the expense of any two. They can, of course, all move together, but let's not pretend like you can't raise profit while lowering revenue because you cut a bunch of expenses. No matter what someone says, you've got to define by asking, compared to what? What is point A? You want to raise revenue. What is your current revenue? By how much? Where is point B? We're trying to get from current revenue to your stated goal. And by when? Time related. How long do you want to spend getting from point A to point B? Which is part of measurement. Then comes the goal-killing question, at what cost? Most people realize that they have named a goal that is maybe possible, but they're not willing to do the things that allow for it to be successfully completed. Someone says they want to double revenue in 12 months. That's a clear thing to aim at. But we can use a process called backcasting, we'll talk more about that later, to define whether or not the goal is reachable. Let's just say this is a multi-location business that would have to open another location in order to double its revenue, because the current location or locations are basically maxed out. To start another location, you're going to have to raise money. It could be loans, it could be equity funding, could be throwing in your own cash, but you need money to get the equipment, to get the lease, to hire the employees. And that means you're probably going to have to give up control, either because investors want some control, or you have to hire new managers who expect some degree of autonomy, and you might end up personally making less money. Once you've defined that, all of the things that are going to be necessary, all the stuff you're going to have to give up in order to reach that goal, a lot of people that I talk to suddenly define their goal as 10% increase over 12 months instead of double. No matter what, goal setting allows for reasonable expectations, and reasonable expectations make everyone's experience better. One of my favorite people was one of Push ROI's worst clients. He wouldn't define goals and he wouldn't define budgets. He said he wouldn't define goals because he was just going to always push for more money, and that he wasn't a child who wrote down how much money he wanted other people to make him. That's a problem. He also wouldn't write down budgets because he would just write checks if we could convince him something was necessary. The issue is we had wild fluctuations based on his mood and opinion of how the business was doing, which would determine whether or not he would write those checks. And now everyone is having to spend time justifying why they need to do something rather than being able to actually execute. It was just a huge problem. If we had done goal setting, he would have known that his business looked something like this over the first 3 months. It was a restaurant, by the way. This is broken down to 12 weeks, but it could just as easily be 12 years for certain types of businesses or 12 months for others. But usually, with restaurants, the first week is concerned with training. You want to make sure everyone shows up on time, they know how to do their jobs, they know how to use the point of sale system. If stuff is done wrong, it is corrected before you have a lot of exposure publicly. Then you establish baseline. How many people come in off the street to buy from you? What are they buying? Can your menu be half the length? Do you need new signage? Are there clear and obvious pain points? Then you start marketing. Once you have established your baseline and you have done a general amount of training that gets employees to the point they're operationally competent. You have been losing money this entire time, and now you're going to lose more because you have a big spike in expense tied to that marketing effort. But your revenue goes up. And shortly after, you will drop that massive marketing spike that was used to launch your new business, and you will then hit operational break even. You might not be able to pay back all the money that was invested getting started yet, but you're going to be able to soon enough. That's a typical 3-month period with a whole lot of restaurants. There are exceptions, but this is what could have been possible for his business, and this is what we had planned out. Here's what his expectations were, the gentleman that I mentioned who wouldn't write down goals, because goals exist even without stating them. He believed the revenue for his business would look something like this over the first 3 months. He believed that staff didn't need training. He believed that marketing needed to start before the construction was finished and before a certificate of occupancy was granted. One of the fights Push ROI had was not doing a bunch of hourly rate marketing because we didn't want to argue about a bill later, so we offered to help with planning, something he roundly rejected. We did a little bit, but not nearly as much as needed to be done, and expectations were wildly unreasonable. He expected marketing to start before we knew when the business would open its doors, which meant the marketing couldn't be effective, but the reason he wanted marketing to start way too early was that he expected to be at operational break-even starting at day 1, without staff training. And somehow the expensive marketing wasn't going to cause him to have a complete conniption fit. Oh, the other thing, he expected explosive growth starting at about week 5, and he expected his sales would be more than a comparable business inside of Disney World. None of his expectations were reasonable, and it created a lot of problems. A friend told me his goal / maybe projection for his business was earn $1 to $2 million a month, meaning revenue, within a year or two. Let's look at that and see if that is remotely possible, if it's a SMART goal. Let's use the framework. Was it specific? Not really, but you can rewrite it and say earn $1 million a month between 1 and 2 years within that period. And that's a goal. Is it measurable? Yeah, you can measure revenue in time, but the initially stated goal has a variability of $56 million and 23 months, depending on if you start earning $2 million a month at month 2. And that means an owner, a manager, an investor can get very mad throughout this entire time because things aren't on track, because people just don't agree with what the track is because the variability is too large. It was relevant to the business. That's great, because a lot of times people come up with totally irrelevant goals. It may seem far-fetched that someone would want to do like a play in order to market their dental office, but it's happened. And it raises the question, how do you market the play? And then what percentage of people who show up to the play that you're now having to market will later go and get their teeth cleaned or get fast braces? It's just more efficient to market the business directly. That sounds so crazy, but it's also what people do when they say, we need to get more Twitter followers so that those people subscribe to our email list so that they eventually buy from us. You've added too many steps. The goal, initially stated, earn 1 to 2 million a month within a year or two. Was it time related? And it was somewhat time related. It's fine to have things within a window of time, but you do want to make sure that there is a deadline. I could say I want to run a marathon in my lifetime and I haven't failed until I've died. Or I could say I want to run a marathon in 10 years, and at 9 years and 3 months, I better start training. Because if I haven't run the marathon, I'm not going to. Then was it achievable? Like I said, this is the entire bread and butter of the presentation and of marketing. The goal was actually achievable. I believe it because similar companies had managed to achieve it in similar markets. What all of those companies had in common were a lot of capital expenditure. They had experienced marketing, operations, and HR staff. Those staff were able to achieve the goal. For my friend's business, I believe it would have taken about $6 million in capital starting at day one in order to fund very, very aggressive expansion. How do we know what's achievable? The answer is you forecast and you backcast. Forecasting basically projects the most likely outcome of existing efforts based on the current resource level. Backcasting starts from the goal, works backwards, and estimates the resources necessary to achieve the desired outcome. The way that looks on paper is if you are here and your goal is way over here, you start looking at what it would take to achieve that goal. You don't even need to consider your current resources. You're just checking to see, what do I have to have today in order to reach that goal, which would be, let's say, 1 to 2 million a month in revenue within 2 years. Then you can forecast. And forecasting is going to tell you how close you can get to the goal. If you can't get anywhere close to the goal with current resources, and you aren't willing to get the resources you need based on the backcast, you must adjust the goal. Doesn't matter how much you like your goal, you must adjust the goal. And I hear you saying, well, that sounds great, but how do I forecast and how do I backcast? The answer is research, a whole lot of research. You can start with some frameworks to tell you where to look, but they will only go so far. No template is going to fix your marketing strategy. You have to actually research, you have to plan, and you have to know what you're doing. You can use Porter's 5 forces to really understand the industry. Then you can do a comparable company analysis, where you look at companies that are similar to yours either by region, by offering, or they directly compete. You can also look at similar business models. For example, a delivery business that delivers something different from what you deliver. You're going to see how your company stacks up based on your business profile and based on your financial profile. Then you do a competitor marketing analysis. This does require expertise in marketing because a lot of it is estimation based on prior knowledge of the industry. You look at ideally direct competitors in the same or very similar markets, and you say, what are they spending on digital ads? What are they spending on print advertising? What are they spending on broadcast ads? How much are they spending on PR? How much are they spending on organic digital? And what is the cost for deemed offers? Once you've started figuring that out, which again requires knowing, for example, how much public relations success are they having? And what does it usually cost to get that level of success? Then you can plot it in a competitor marketing matrix where you say who's spending a lot of money very efficiently, a lot of money inefficiently, a little bit of money very efficiently, and a little bit of money very inefficiently. That's going to give you an idea of what efforts you can focus on based on the resources you have. I would also recommend doing a pest analysis where you look at political, economic, social, and technological factors. This helps you predict things coming down the pipes, but you will never be able to predict COVID. Just remember, there are limitations to all of these. You're doing it so you have the best chance of success. I would also do a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for your business and every business that competes with you. You should know exactly what's going on in the industry. Bottom line, you can use every framework and you can build all kinds of beautiful charts, but they will only take you so far. The success relies on research. Forecasting or backcasting depend on what data you trust. You can choose to trust quality data from real sources, or you can go with assumptions. And assumptions are very easy to make, very easy to miss, and will absolutely destroy your business. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen someone assume Their serviceable addressable market is larger than the total addressable market in reality. I'm Mason Pelt for Push ROI. If you liked this video, please subscribe. If you disliked the video, well, go ahead and leave a mean comment. If you want to hire us, check out pushroi.com. No matter what, thank you for watching.